Ex-husband forces ex-wife into a dangerous situation. Will this push them to the edge? Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. Jason Adams, a man with a troubled past, and Emily Collins, his ex-wife. Both have been through a lot, but nothing could prepare them for the dangerous situation Jason was about to create. Jason, a man once full of charm, had slowly turned into someone Emily barely recognized. The events leading up to this point were a mix of misunderstanding, old wounds, and a lingering bitterness that neither of them could shake off. Emily, on the other hand, had tried to move on, focusing on her career and building a new life. But Jason, with his unpredictable nature, had a way of pulling her back into his world, especially when things were about to spiral out of control. For years, they had tried to avoid each other, keeping their distance, but there was always that lingering tension between them. Jason had a knack for causing chaos, and Emily knew that very well. The last time they spoke, it was nothing short of explosive, leaving both of them questioning the choices they had made. Emily had hoped it would be the last time their paths crossed, but fate had other plans. Now, Jason had pushed her into a dangerous situation, one that would test the limits of their patience, their emotions, and their ability to move on. What was Jason's true motive? Was he seeking revenge, or was he simply trying to regain control of something he once had? And Emily, could she find a way out of this mess, or would she be forced to confront the past she had long tried to escape? The answers to these questions were just beginning to unfold, and the journey ahead was anything but predictable. I thought things were finally settling down for Emily Collins, but she couldn't have been more wrong. As the days passed, Jason's presence loomed over her like a shadow, never quite gone but always on the periphery of her life. The tension between them, which they both had tried to avoid for so long, was now impossible to escape. Every time Emily checked her phone, she saw his name flash across the screen, a reminder that Jason was still out there, still lurking in the background of her world. At first, she had tried to ignore it, to move on with her life. She had her work, her friends, and a new sense of independence that she had fought hard to achieve after their messy divorce. But that sense of peace was slowly crumbling. It was as if Jason knew exactly when to strike. He wasn't just reaching out to her anymore, he was pushing her, testing her limits. She could feel it in the way he sent cryptic messages, the way he would appear uninvited in places she frequented, just to remind her that he could still control the situation. Emily was no longer the woman she had been when they first met. She was stronger, more resilient, but Jason's persistence was something she had never anticipated. She had hoped that after all these years, they would both go their separate ways, that they would move on and never cross paths again. But Jason wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. He seemed to take pleasure in making her uncomfortable, in reminding her of their shared past, of the way he had always had the upper hand in their relationship. The thought of him still having power over her made Emily's blood boil. But what could she do? She didn't want to escalate things further, but she also couldn't let him continue to invade her life like this. Then, just when Emily thought it couldn't get worse, Jason invited her to meet him in person. She didn't want to. She had made it clear, over and over again, that she wanted nothing to do with him, but his message was urgent, persuasive. He claimed it was important, that there was something she needed to know, something that could change everything. Of course, Emily didn't trust him. She had learned the hard way never to believe his promises, his sweet words that were always followed by manipulation and deceit. But curiosity got the better of her, and despite her better judgment, she agreed to meet him. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew this meeting would be unlike any of their previous encounters. Jason had always been unpredictable, and now, as she prepared for their meeting, Emily couldn't help but wonder if this was going to be the moment that pushed them both to the edge. Would this encounter finally give her the closure she needed, or would it only make things more complicated? As Emily stood in front of the coffee shop, the place where Jason had asked to meet, her heart raced. She had no idea what was about to unfold, but she was ready to face whatever came next. She had no choice but to confront him, to face the past she had spent so long running from. I thought the tension would break the moment I saw Jason, but nothing prepared me for the wave of emotions that rushed through me. He was sitting at the table, his back straight, eyes scanning the door as if he knew I was about to walk in. When our eyes met, I felt that old, familiar knot in my stomach, the one I had tried so hard to forget. Jason had always had a way of getting under my skin, even when I didn't want him to. But this time, it felt different. There was something in his demeanor that seemed more calculating, more dangerous than before. He didn't rise to greet me like he used to. Instead, he just motioned for me to sit. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice flat, almost too calm. I hesitated for a moment before sitting down, my hands resting on the table, my fingers tapping nervously. I tried to appear calm, but I could feel my heart racing. "What is it, Jason?" I asked, my voice tight. "Why did you ask me to meet you?" He leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. For a moment, there was silence between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. "I think you know why I wanted to see you," he said slowly. "I've been trying to reach you for a reason." I raised an eyebrow, refusing to let him manipulate me again. "You've already made your intentions clear," I said, my voice firm. "I'm done with you, Jason. I've moved on." He smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was cold, almost like he was savoring something. "I'm not here to talk about the past," he said. "I need you to understand something. Something that might change everything." His words hung in the air, and I felt my pulse quicken. What could he possibly have to say that would change everything? My mind raced, trying to anticipate where this was going. But I didn't trust him. Not anymore. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice laced with suspicion. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking again. "There's something you don't know," he said quietly. "Something you never understood. And I need to tell you, Emily. For your own good." I stared at him, my mind reeling. What could it be? Why now? I wasn't sure I wanted to hear whatever it was he had to say. But I couldn't leave without knowing. "What is it, Jason?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "You're not as free as you think you are," he said, his voice low. "There's something you still don't know about your own life. And I'm the only one who can tell you." I felt a chill run down my spine. Was he threatening me? I couldn't tell. I wanted to get up and walk away, but my curiosity kept me rooted to the spot. Something in his eyes told me this was far from over, that this conversation was just the beginning. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me, his gaze sharp, waiting for me to respond. It took every ounce of strength to stay calm, to keep my emotions in check. I had been through too much with Jason to let him rattle me now. But deep down, a nagging feeling tugged at me. What did he mean by that? What could he possibly know that I didn't? "You're not making any sense," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "What do you think you can tell me that I don't already know? You're just playing games, Jason. I've heard it all before." Jason didn't flinch. He only looked at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the silence between us felt like a wall, thick and unyielding. "I'm not playing games, Emily," he said, his voice steady. "This is real. You don't know everything. And I'm here to make sure you understand that." I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "What is it, Jason? What could be so important that you had to drag me here? Why now?" His lips twitched slightly, almost like he was fighting a smirk, but the look in his eyes was serious. "It's about the things you don't remember. About what you've been kept in the dark about all these years." I frowned, confusion creeping in. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice tight with frustration. What could I possibly have forgotten? Jason sighed, as if explaining something obvious. You think your life was your own, don't you? You think everything that happened, everything you went through, was just a series of unfortunate events. But it wasn't. Someone made sure of that. My heart skipped a beat. His words were chilling, and yet there was something about them that rang true. I had always felt like there was something off about my past, something that didn't quite add up. But I had buried those thoughts long ago, not wanting to deal with the truth. And now, Jason was opening a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. Who? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Who made sure of that? Jason didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He slid it across the table to me, his eyes never leaving mine. This is for you, he said. It's time you knew the truth. I stared at the envelope, my hands trembling as I picked it up. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know what was inside. But a part of me, the part that had always craved answers, couldn't resist. Slowly, I tore the envelope open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The moment I read the first line, my stomach dropped. My whole world shifted, and for the first time in years I felt like I was on the edge of something I couldn't control. I could hardly breathe as my eyes skimmed the paper. The words blurred in front of me, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I tried to focus, but the gravity of what Jason had just given me was sinking in. The truth I had spent so many years avoiding, the truth that had been hidden from me, was finally laid bare. I felt the world around me begin to spin, the noise of the coffee shop fading away as my mind raced to process the information in front of me. Jason watched me carefully, his gaze intense, waiting for my reaction. I could feel his presence pressing down on me, suffocating me with every passing second. But I couldn't tear my eyes away from the paper. What is this? I whispered, my voice trembling. Jason's expression remained unreadable. It's everything you need to know, he replied quietly. Everything you've been kept in the dark about. My heart pounded in my chest as I read the first sentence again. It was a name. A name I had never heard before. The name of someone I should have known, someone who was supposed to be part of my life. But it was a name that had been erased from my memory, buried deep within the past. I couldn't understand it. How could I not have known about this person? Why hadn't anyone told me? The paper was filled with details, dates, places, all things I couldn't quite make sense of. But the one thing that stood out was the mention of a secret, something about my past that had been deliberately hidden. Something that Jason knew, something he was now forcing me to confront. I looked up at him, my eyes filled with disbelief. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice shaking with emotion. Why now? Jason leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the surface of the table. Because you deserve to know the truth, Emily. You can't move forward without it. You've spent so long running from your past, from the things that happened, but you can't keep hiding forever. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Was this really happening? Was Jason telling me that my entire life, my past, had been a lie? How long have you known about this? I asked, barely able to form the words. Longer than you think, he said, his voice low. But I didn't want to tell you before. I wanted you to be ready. Ready? I repeated, incredulous. Ready for what? To have my whole life turned upside down? Jason didn't respond immediately. He just sat there, his eyes locked onto mine, as if waiting for me to understand something I wasn't ready to grasp. The silence between us grew heavy, and I could feel the tension building again. The questions swirled in my mind, but I couldn't find the words to ask. What else was there to learn? What else had I been kept in the dark about? The paper still lay in front of me, its secrets calling to me, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to face them. I wasn't sure if I could handle the truth. But deep down, I knew I had no choice. I had to know. No matter how painful it was, I had to face the truth, no matter what it cost. I stared at the paper in front of me, the words on it blurring as my mind tried to make sense of what Jason had just dropped into my lap. I had always known that something was missing from my past, some piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit, but I never expected it to be like this. Every fiber of my being screamed to throw the paper away, to walk out of the coffee shop and never look back. But I couldn't. Not after everything. Not after the years of wondering, of questioning, and now, finally, the chance to uncover the truth. I could feel Jason's eyes on me, the weight of his stare like a pressure on my chest. He was waiting for me to react, to say something, but I couldn't find the words. How was I supposed to react to this? How was I supposed to process something that could change everything I thought I knew about myself? Emily. Jason's voice cut through my thoughts, soft but insistent. You need to understand what this means. You can't ignore it anymore. I looked up at him, my mind still racing. I don't understand, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't understand what any of this means. Why are you telling me this now? Jason's face softened, just slightly, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Because you deserve to know. Because it's time for you to stop running from the past. You can't keep pretending that everything is okay when there's so much you don't know. So much you haven't been told. His words hit me like a wave. I had spent so many years convincing myself that I was fine, that my past was behind me. But now, Jason was forcing me to confront it all over again. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. And what do you expect me to do with this information? I asked, the anger creeping into my voice. What do you think I'm supposed to do now? Jason didn't answer right away. He just watched me, his eyes searching mine as if he was trying to figure out what I was thinking. Finally, he spoke again, his voice lower this time. I don't know what you'll do, Emily. But I know this, knowing the truth will set you free. You won't be able to move forward until you understand the full picture. I shook my head, not fully believing what I was hearing. What if I don't want to know? What if I just want to walk away from all of this? Jason's expression hardened slightly. You can walk away, but you'll never be free of it. Not until you face what's been kept from you. I stared at him, the weight of his words settling deep inside me. He was right in a way, I couldn't escape the past. It had followed me for so long, and now, I had no choice but to face it. I took a deep breath and picked up the paper again, my hands trembling. This was it. The moment I had been dreading, the moment when everything I thought I knew would be upended. The truth was within my reach, and whether I was ready or not, I had to know it. I had to face it, even if it meant that my world would never be the same again. I couldn't stop staring at the paper. The words were seared into my mind, but the meaning still felt like a distant echo. The room around me seemed to fade away, as if the walls were closing in on me. I knew I couldn't just sit here, frozen in disbelief. I had to take action, but what could I possibly do with this information? The truth was too overwhelming, too big to process in just one sitting. Jason was watching me closely, waiting for a reaction, but I couldn't give him what he wanted. Not yet. I needed time to think, to process the enormity of what was in my hands. Emily. Jason finally broke the silence, his voice softer now, almost reassuring. I know this is a lot to take in, but you have to understand, this changes everything. You don't have to go through this alone. His words felt like a lifeline, but at the same time, they felt like a trap. I didn't know if I could trust him. How could I? He had always been manipulative, always looking for ways to control me. But the look in his eyes told me something different this time. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't lying. I need some time, I said, my voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Jason nodded, his expression softening for the first time in what felt like forever. Take all the time you need, he said. But don't wait too long. You can't keep running from the truth. I stood up, my hands still trembling as I stuffed the paper into my bag. I didn't know where to go, what to do next. All I knew was that everything had changed. I had always believed that the past was behind me, that it was a chapter one could close and never look back on. But now, I realized that it wasn't just a chapter, it was a whole book, and I had only seen a few pages. What had Jason meant by the things he said? What had he known all these years that he was finally ready to reveal? And why had he waited until now to tell me? I walked out of the coffee shop, the cool air hitting my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed space to think, to breathe. The weight of the paper in my bag was heavy, a constant reminder of the secret I now carried. But what was I supposed to do with it? I couldn't go back to my old life, not now. Things had changed, and I had to face whatever came next. As I walked aimlessly through the streets, the city felt different. The noise, the people, everything seemed so distant, like I was seeing it all through a fog. I couldn't focus. My mind kept racing, replaying the words Jason had said, trying to piece together the puzzle he had handed me. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. What was I supposed to do with this new truth? What was it going to cost me? And more importantly, what would it mean for my future? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't run anymore. Whatever this was, whatever Jason had revealed, I had to face it. I had no choice. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache. The events of the day before felt like a blur, but the weight of the truth Jason had forced upon me was still heavy in my chest. I had tried to sleep, tried to push the thoughts away, but every time I closed my eyes I saw the paper, the words etched into my mind, impossible to forget. I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire life had just shifted on its axis. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but it only raised more questions. Why had Jason waited so long to tell me this? What had he been holding back all these years? I needed answers, but I wasn't sure I was ready to face them. I sat up in bed and looked at the clock. It was late morning, and the sun was streaming through the blinds, casting a soft light across the room. I had a decision to make. I could go on pretending like nothing had changed, like everything was fine. Or I could confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. But what if the truth was more than I could handle? What if uncovering all the secrets Jason had kept from me only made things worse? I couldn't go back to the way things were before. I had seen the cracks in the facade, and now, there was no turning back. I had to find out what Jason had meant by all of this, but I wasn't sure how to proceed. Should I go to him again? Should I demand more answers? Or was it time to take matters into my own hands and figure this out for myself? The uncertainty gnawed at me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The world seemed normal, unchanged, but I knew it wasn't. My life had been upended, and I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to take. After what felt like hours, I finally made up my mind. I needed to see Jason again. I needed to confront him, face to face, and demand the answers he had been keeping from me. There was no more running. I couldn't hide from the truth any longer. I grabbed my phone and sent him a message, telling him to meet me at the same coffee shop we had been at the day before. I wasn't sure what I would say when I saw him, but I knew that I couldn't let this go. I had to know the full story, no matter how painful it might be. The truth was out there, and I was going to find it. I left my apartment and made my way to the coffee shop. The walk was long, and my mind was racing with possibilities. What would Jason tell me this time? Would he reveal more secrets? Or would he try to manipulate me again, like he always had? I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I was ready for whatever came next. As I stepped inside the coffee shop, I saw him right away. Jason was sitting at the same table, his eyes scanning the room as if he were waiting for me. The sight of him stirred something inside of me, a mixture of anger, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite name. I walked over to him, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. The moment that would either bring me the closure I needed or shatter everything I thought I knew. I walked up to the table where Jason was sitting, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked up as I approached, his eyes locking with mine. For a moment, the world around us seemed to disappear, and all I could focus on was him, the man who had changed my life in ways I never expected. He didn't smile, didn't stand to greet me. Instead, he just watched me, his gaze intense, waiting for me to say something. "I'm here," I said, my voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "Now tell me everything." Jason didn't immediately respond. He just nodded, as if he had expected this moment. "I knew you'd come," he said quietly. "I didn't think you'd be ready this soon, but I knew you'd come when the time was right." His words were almost too calm, as if he had been preparing for this conversation for much longer than I had. I sat down across from him, trying to steady my breathing. My mind was still reeling from everything he had told me yesterday, and now I was here, about to confront him again. "What do you want from me, Jason?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What's the point of all this?" Jason leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "The point is simple," he said, his voice low but firm. "You need to understand the truth about your past. It's been hidden from you for too long, and I'm the only one who can help you see it." I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "I didn't ask for this," I said, my voice growing louder. "I didn't ask for you to drag me into all this, to force me to relive things I thought I had left behind." Jason's expression softened slightly, but there was no apology in his eyes. "I know it's hard," he said, his voice quieter now. "But you have to see it, Emily. You can't move on until you know the full truth. You'll never truly be free unless you face what's been kept from you." I sat back in my chair, trying to process his words. He was right in a way. I had spent so many years running from the past, trying to forget the things I didn't understand. But now, with every word he spoke, I felt the walls of my carefully constructed life start to crumble. "I don't know if I can handle this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to face whatever it is you're about to tell me." Jason was quiet for a moment, his eyes studying me carefully. "You're stronger than you think, Emily," he said, his voice almost gentle. "But you have to be willing to face the truth, no matter how difficult it might be." The weight of his words settled on me, and for a moment, I felt completely lost. How had I gotten here? How had I let this man pull me back into a past I had tried so hard to forget? But then I realized something. I couldn't keep running. Not anymore. If I wanted to move forward with my life, if I wanted to find peace, I had to face whatever Jason had been hiding all these years. I had to know the truth. "Okay," I said, my voice firm. "Tell me everything." Jason nodded slowly, a hint of something in his eyes. Was it relief? Was it regret? I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing for sure: this conversation would change everything. "The truth is," he began, his voice steady, "there's something you don't know about your family. Something that goes back years, long before we ever met." My heart skipped a beat. What could he possibly mean? And why was he the one telling me this now? The answer, I realized, was right in front of me. Jason had always been a part of my past, whether I liked it or not. And now, it seemed, he was the only one who could unlock the door to the secrets I had spent my entire life trying to forget.